Welcome to readtheticker.com. Today we're going to talk about Gann's Law of Vibration and find the cycle. You go to General Information and scroll down to William's Gann Law of Vibration. You'll find this page here. Gann discovered from the laws of nature that all stocks and commodities vibrate to their own sort of sequence. Some are faster than others, some are slower than others. Each stock or commodity has a certain amount of energy. It's influenced by its own type of characteristics. And it then creates this vibration or cycle. And his idea was to determine the cycle or the vibration, master it, and learn it to time the markets with the help of his Gann angles. To the layman, he explains this. He gives a quote. It is impossible here to give an adequate idea of the law of vibration as I apply it to the markets. However, the layman may be able to grasp some of the principles when I state that the law of vibration is a fundamental law upon which wireless telegraphy, wireless telephones, and photographs are based. Stocks create their own field of action and power to attract and repel. This principle explains why certain stocks at times lead the market and others turn dead at other times. What he's basically sort of saying is that like radio waves, stocks vibrate or cycle. And at times when cycles aren't aligned, or different cycles on the commodity or stock are out of sync, the wave can break down. So at times it's in cycle, and time the wave can break down. So when a cycle breaks down, or vibration, we call that an inversion. Just like to state that as this website's a Wyckoff, Livermore and Jim Hurst and Gann site, all these members believed in cycles in the market. They used them in different ways and put different degrees of attention upon them. Gann has believed that the cycles or influences actually came from astrological influences, Pluto towards Saturn, Earth towards Saturn, and this type of thing. Here's a Gann chart with the Gann angles, planet mark, cycle point, a square of 1 to 1. Let's look at an example. Here we have Google. We want to find the vibration or the cycle within Google. Obviously you can use manual tools to find periods where lows and highs synchronize. Another tool you can use is our cycle finder spectrum. Very powerful tool that scans the data for cycles or vibrations. The first weapon at your disposal is a calculation known as Bartel's. What this does, it runs along periods of cycles, for example 1 to 150, and a data set of 5. Right, so what this is 5 times 150. So 5 times 150 is 750 data points, and we've got 150 periods to examine. So we got the red lines show that cycles that have peaked with a high amplitude. So the cycle period is on the top there, and the Bartel's is the light red line, and the heavy grey line is the amplitude. For example, what you want to find is a very low Bartel's, that's a very low red line, and you want to find a high amplitude with a red spike, the red top there. So you want to find, like for example here is 75, it's a very low Bartel's, it's a good cycle, but unfortunately the amplitude's a bit low, but still you have to look at it. Here with 103, we've got a pretty high amplitude. Bartel's is a little bit high, but it sort of gets down to about here. So you put the cursor over here, see 107 looks pretty good. So that scans all that data very quickly to tell you where the cycles are in the data. It is mathematical. Then when we rank the data with the periods by Bartel's value, the highest is the most dominant cycle, and you would examine that. You can look at that for trading days, and you can look at that for calendar days. Difference between trading days and calendar days, obviously in a trading day environment you might have a 4-day week where you might have Martin Luther King Day, you might have Christmas Day, what have you. For calendar days, obviously it takes into every calendar day. We take, for example, if a week falls with a Martin Luther Day, the actual gap is filled with a close price, so all weekends and holidays are included in there, so you actually get a true calendar trading period. The reason why we do calendar and trading days is because price versus time is the challenge. It's the matchup. So time, obviously, we actually live on weekends, we have holidays, and price is taken into account. So you scan both trading days and calendar days, because time has two variables of weekends and holidays or not. Just gives another perspective. You could actually have a very dominant cycle. For example, here, a lot more dominant cycles in the calendar days. You might want to study those a lot closer. Now, Bartel's is a very good formula for finding the cycle. I want to explain that in a bit more detail. Here's an example of a Bartel's calculation. We have price action here in the black line. We have two Bartel periods to examine. We've got cycle periods to examine. We've got a 69 and an 80. Now, as you can see, the green line is not a very well forming cycle. For example, we want to find a cycle that looks like this, like that example. We want to see a cycle that swings nice with good amplitude, good up and down peaks and troughs. We don't really want to see a cycle where it breaks down, as in the middle of this phase here, where the actual the vibration of the cycle has lost influence. We want to find a period where my cursor is, where the cycle has found influence and is swinging nicely. So what you're looking for is a near perfect or as good as perfect sine wave. I'll go back to my Bartel's example. So here we have a scan of two cycle periods, 69 and 80. As you see, the green line doesn't really look like a sine wave, and therefore it has a very bad Bartel's number. A bad Bartel's number is 91, and a good Bartel's number is a low one. So the blue line actually looks a bit like a sine wave, but cycles well. This is because the cycle calculation is actually an adaptive cycle and actually includes the effect for price action. So the green line has been adapted with price, and as you can see, the 69 period is not really fitting with the data that well, and therefore doesn't sine wave well, doesn't cycle well. Whereas the 80 line is fitted to the data and it holds its sine wave form, even though it starts to lose it at the end, but it's still holding it pretty good. So it gets a lower Bartel's. Now Bartel's will scan all the data selected. For example, it will scan from January 09 to the end of July, and then what it does is it adds up the sine wave score and gives an average. What actually could happen with a Bartel's cycle determination, you might have a very good Bartel's score, but the cycle starts to fade at the end. So you might have a very nice swinging sine wave at the blue line, and then in some examples you can actually see the sine wave start to falter at the end. That's because the cycle influence start to fall off right at the end of the data. But you can still get a low Bartel's score because the overall average shows a pretty good relationship. Now there's one way to get around that, to find whether the cycle is performing immediately at the data end. We have a Bartel's analysis. We can determine what we like out of that. And what we can do is we can actually go to an eyeball tool. I called it eyeball because we have to use our eyes to determine which cycle is best. It's loading. Google data. No, it's not. I've actually forgot the scan for Google. Yeah. Okay. Bit of data. Go to eyeball. There we got Google data. Now, as you see here, we have Google data, and when we scan down, you see on the left-hand side, cycle periods are fixed. That means they range 10, 15, 20, 25, all the way down to 120. Actually, you can actually change the symbol in the data frame. I'm going to actually zoom out here to get a bit more data, rebuild the chart. What we're looking for, as I described, is the best looking sine wave. Because the cycle data, because the the cycle I'm showing you is an adaptive cycle. It moves with price. So the better the sine wave we see in the eyeball formula means that the cycle is more dominant in the data. So we're looking for a very good sine wave. Okay, here we've got our data exploded. So obviously you can see 10 is pretty volatile. Doesn't look too bad. We'll go once again here. Remember how it cycles well, then it falls off. Dominant, fades, dominant, fades, dominant. That's exactly what happens here. The data price action is working very well with a 10-period cycle, then it fades off. So what you do is you use your eyeballs, and what we're interested in here is how the cycle is performing in the most recent data action. Oh, 15 is pretty good, actually pretty good all the way through. So for a short-term cycle, the 15 period is pretty good. 20, 25. And here's, for example, here you see cycle 35. The actual cycle starts to fade, so it's losing its influence. 40 is starting to look pretty attractive. 50 looks pretty good. You see how the sine wave is swinging very nicely with period 50? So what I would do is I take a note of 50 and I would examine the data between 55 and 45. And it might find the perfect cycle is 48 or 52. And as you scan down, or actually 80 is not too bad either. Well, actually 90 is not too bad. So you take a note of these cycles and you make note. For example, 120 cycle doesn't look very influential. As you see, the black line here is not holding its form. So you take a note of what cycles are working well, the eyeball, and you're really trying to concentrate at the end here. Because Bartel gives a good score over the overall data, but it loses its significance at the end because Bartel, unfortunately, is an average of cycle performance. So you take a note with what you find with the eyes. And I think I found 50 and 90. Right, okay, we'll do that. Go back to the spectrum. And this is trading days. I'm going to do a manual check. I put 50 and 90 in here. For Google, run a scan. And as you know, from the eyeball test, cycle 50 and 90, it looked pretty attractive. And as you see there, they don't even show up in Bartel's because the Bartel's number is actually quite high. But when you eyeball it, the number looks pretty good. So Bartel's is a good starting point. And the eyeball test is another left of field looking at the data. Maybe if I reduce the data set and lower the cycle selection. Maybe make a bit more on that. Because Bartel's is an average, it examines all the data. So now instead of looking at 750 periods, we're just looking at about 500 periods. Yeah, there you go. See 50 showing up here, this blue line. Blue marker, sorry. Shows that cycle does show up in lesser periods. Still pretty low Bartel's, but the red line shows actually 40, what is it, 49? Yeah, I would look at 47. So even though I found 50, I'll probably go and look at 47 and using it in my data. So you look at the data, you look at, use Bartel's, you use the eyeball, you can use the what if to put the cycle structure together to see how it goes. Now if we go back to our chart, put in our cycle tool, I'll put in 47 here. Rebuild. Alright, so here we have our 47. As you can see, it's cycling pretty well. And this chart's already formatted for a 1-to-1. So I place my Gann angle on. I can then use my Gann angle and my cycle bottoms to trade the Gann way.